how to blur or use the shape blur effect in Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop CC220. You could use 219, 218, etc. It goes all the way back to well beyond CS6, etc. Now, there's a lot of different blur effects in Photoshop, and they're all pretty useful, but there's not much you can do to vary them. There's no sort of additional input you can add into it. You've got motion blur there. You can change the angle. That's it. You can't make it, well, you know what, I want it to be swerving around in different angles, all those sort of things. Well, you can do that with the shape blur. It gives you more input, and you can create your own shapes that can be used as input. So filter menu, blur and shape blur, and then just go down to the bottom and select one of the shapes. Now, there's a variety of different shapes that come with Photoshop. You can create your own shapes as well, and you can vary the radius setting. The higher it is, the more the blur just comes complete blur. If you keep it slightly lower, maybe 10, 20, 30, it's quicker, but also you can actually see the effect of the shape. And I've created some shapes down the bottom. Some of those shapes are my shapes, and you can create your own shapes very quickly using such as the pen tool, curvature tool, as well as maybe use some of the shapes like rectangles, ellipses to create all kinds of different amazing vector designs that can be used as inputs. So you've got that sort of design there to create as if you're walking up the steps to create a shaky effect. And there's no blur for that in Photoshop. There are some applications with a shaky blur effect. Photoshop does not come with that. So that's a great use for shape blur. And you can use it with type to create some very unique type effects. Simply go to the pen tool, and like I say, you could use a curvature tool, rectangle. You could build up all kinds of different shapes. Now, just quickly add some, and it needs to be a closed path. So just quickly create a closed path using the pen tool. Make certain all the points are selected once you've finished. Otherwise, the define custom shape command won't be available, and you'll need the direct selection tool just simply to select all of the points for your path, then go to edit menu and define custom shape. And you can do this with all kinds of different, very quickly created shapes. Now, this zigzag will create a very sort of shaky effect again, and you of course can transform it and modify it so you can scale it, etc. Squeeze it a bit more there. So you've got all that, all the points are selected. With all the points selected with the direct selection tool, go to edit menu, define custom shape. To add another one, click OK for that. And then what you can do, go back to the image, and then you can apply your shape. So go to filter menu, shape blur again by the blur category, down to shape blur, and then select that shape. Now, I would say that it's not the most responsive filter. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's doing anything. Sometimes I click there, I think, has it selected? There it has. Finally, it selected it. And you can see the result there of that shape. And you, of course, can vary it. Increase the radius or decrease the radius. Obviously, go back right down to virtually nothing. You will hardly see any of your shape. But you can increase it and you'll be able to see a very unique blurring effect. And that's all from that shape source. And of course, you can input anything. So it could be a rectangle, it could be a circle, to create all kinds of different blurs. And something, if you're wanting to blur your design, your image, then the shape blur is a very useful tool. And you can see the effect there. And the same, you can apply it to a selection, maybe apply it to smart objects as well. You can also fade the effect as well. So you can go to edit menu and fade it. Maybe apply it to a layer. I say you can modify that design if you wish and define a new custom shape. Or create a very basic one, just say go with a rectangle or maybe a very thin line if you want a thin line design. And then you can create something similar to the motion blur, but it's a unique blurring effect. That's the key thing. That's what you want. I think shape blur is a quite useful filter for that. And if you don't use blurs at all, then obviously this filter will have no help or use for you probably at all. But I think it creates subtle image effects, maybe around the edge of things. You can create very unusual edge effects around a layer. And of course you can also apply it to a custom shape itself to create some unusual effects. So again, you've got your custom shape that's been stored, that line. You can go down to the filter menu and again down to blur and shape blur and apply that line. And this shape effect can also be applied to maybe brush strokes as well, or maybe to a pattern design. And it just adds that special, weird and wonderful touch. What you can also do is that you can use blending mode. So you can apply the effect. Sadly, there's no blending mode feature within the actual filter itself. I think that would be a lovely addition to all of these filters if they put blending modes in there. I'm not certain why they've never added that. Of course, what you can do, you have to go out and go to the edit menu and use the fade command there. It seems an extra bit of work, frankly. So there's a different, and now if you've got light streaks there, whereas you've got like the usual motion blur, I don't think it's so effective. I think this is actually a really quite nice way of creating a motion blur effect. It's certainly different and unique. And of course, you could choose any of the other shapes there. There's a vast number of legacy shapes that come with like a house. Now, that probably won't create the most amazing effect, but it's a quick experiment, and maybe you suddenly find, you know what, it does. As I say, you can go to the edit menu and fade it, maybe use darken or lighten. So that doesn't produce the most amazing effect. Obviously, a house is not something you expect, particularly in the scene. Once you've done that, click OK. Go to the edit menu and then you can go to fade shape blur. And you can run through those. Maybe darken. Or maybe go for lighten to create a sort of weird, unreal, surreal looking colour effect. So it's lighten. It gives a sort of slight, subtle edge to the effect. And of course you can modify the opacity if you wish. Normally I end up keeping it at 100%. Where we go with screen. And it gives so again, another slightly unreal, worldly look to your image. And of course you can vary the shape. It doesn't have to be obviously that house design. And of course what you can do once you've done that, you can apply the shape blur again and again if you wish to apply that, maybe with very subtle settings. Hope you found this of interest. Please subscribe to the Graphicxtras channel, always adding new tutorials about Photoshop, Illustrator and many others. Please add some comments, always appreciated, a dislike or like. Thank you much.